At first, no one paid attention to the disaster, until people were shocked to see a giant cruise ship suddenly heading towards the beach, causing terrified tourists to scatter in all directions. They finally managed to avoid the risk just before this massive object came crashing in. Originally thought this accident was just an unexpected incident. Little did they know a greater catastrophe was about to befall them. Just a short while ago, the male protagonist, Clay, had arrived at this small island for a vacation with his family. They had rented a luxurious villa in advance, planning to enjoy a pleasant weekend, but they hadn't expected to encounter this horrifying scene on the beach on their very first day. Clay's wife, Amanda, wanted to check the internet for the cause of the cruise ship incident but found that no matter what, she couldn't connect to the network. Watching their children play carefree in the pool, they didn't take all this to heart. After all, even without the internet, it wouldn't affect their family's enjoyment of the day here. However, that night, as the children had already fallen into a deep sleep due to the lack of internet, aboard Clay was playing with building blocks and chatting with Amanda. That's when the sound of the door suddenly rang out. When Clay opened it, he found a man and a woman standing at the door, the man introducing himself as GH and the woman beside him as his daughter, Ruth. Clay didn't understand why they were knocking at such a late hour. GH explained that he was the owner of the villa, the landlord who had rented the place to Clay's family for their vacation. Since the rental transaction was completed online, neither party had met in person. GH only knew that the house was rented to a woman named Amanda, Clay's wife. Although GH's return was sudden, Clay still invited them inside. When asked for the specific reason, GH told them that although it violated the rental agreement, he had to return to this house. For some reason, not only was there a massive power outage in the city where he lived, but the internet had also collapsed, and people seemed to be falling into chaos. To avoid danger for him and Ruth, he had to bring Rose back to this secluded old house ahead of time. Before this, GH had tried to contact Amanda to inform her of everything, but the phone was always out of signal, so he had to bring Rose back overnight. Finally, GH hoped to stay here with Ruth for just one night, and everything would be discussed the next day. Hearing this, Amanda expressed her refusal. After all, according to the rental agreement, she now had the right to use the house and had the right to refuse anyone's request, including the landlord. Seeing the refusal, GH apologized and said he would be right back. Then he walked straight to the nearby storage cabinet. He then took out a key, opened the cabinet door, and pulled out a stack of cash. GH handed it directly to Clay, stating he was willing to return half of the rental fee if only they would let him and Rose stay for one night. Upon receiving the money, Clay tried to persuade Amanda to agree, but his wife still disagreed. Afterward, they discussed it privately. Amanda didn't believe the words of the father and daughter, and she also didn't want to share a house with strangers. In case of any danger, what should they do? Clay thought they didn't seem like they were lying. Most importantly, GH knew Amanda's name and could open the storage cabinet in the house. They engaged in a heated discussion. Eventually, they decided to talk to the other party again. If they felt anything was amiss, they would directly reject their proposal. So, they had another long conversation in the dining room. However, no matter how familiar GH was with the house or how he explained, Amanda remained unconvinced. Even if GH was the landlord, he had no right to reside in the house during the rental period. Just as Amanda was about to persuade them to find another place to stay, the television behind them suddenly issued an alert. The news seemed to confirm that GH wasn't lying, so Clay agreed to let him stay for one night. To avoid any awkwardness, GH and his daughter voluntarily moved to the villa's basement. As the night deepened and everyone gradually fell asleep, the television broadcasting the warning suddenly had a new alert. As the sun rose to the next day, GH's daughter Rose came to her mother's bed early in the morning, fussing to watch the finale of Friends. Since there was an issue with the television, she wanted her mother to check it, so Amanda left the task to her husband. Clay switched through several channels and couldn't find a signal, so he could only tell Rose that he'd go to the town store later and find a repairman on the way to check the situation. A frustrated Rose went outside to sunbathe, but at that moment, a strange scene occurred. As Rose turned around, she suddenly saw a few deer appearing not far away. Curious, she went over to check but didn't expect the forest to be filled with deer. Meanwhile, GH, after getting up, told Amanda to let Ruth stay here while he would visit a friend's house on the other side of the island. If possible, he would stay at his friend's house with Ruth until Julia's rental period ended, and they could come back. Soon after, GH drove to his friend's house. Strangely, the place was a mess. as if it had encountered some disaster. A puzzled GH pushed the door open and walked in, only to be shocked to find the inside in a similar state. As he called out with no response, he inadvertently noticed that the window glass was also shattered. Unable to find his friend, GH went straight to the garage, remembering there should be a satellite phone there. After some searching, GH finally found the satellite phone in a box, but even the satellite phone couldn't find any signal. Such bizarre occurrences deeply troubled GH. To confirm if his friend was in trouble, GH walked towards the nearby beach, and not far, he suddenly saw a watch in the sand. As he carefully picked it up, he shockingly found an arm beneath it, a horrifying sight that made GH collapse to the ground. But then, an even more terrifying scene unfolded as he saw a ghastly corpse lying nearby. As GH stood up and looked towards the sea, he was shocked to see debris and bodies everywhere. Just as he couldn't understand what had happened, a plane suddenly headed straight towards his area from the sky. In a critical moment, GH ran back swiftly. On the other side, Clay, on his way to the town store, suddenly saw a plane ahead of him, but it seemed to be scattering large swaths of red material towards the ground. Unsure of what was happening, Clay turned the car around to avoid being affected, but he didn't expect the thing behind him to get closer and closer. Then, it overwhelmed the entire car in a moment of terror for Clay. As the scene shifted, Rose, with her brother Archie, went into the forest, where she told him about the strange scene she saw in the morning. The appearance of the deer seemed to be warning them about something, which piqued Rose's curiosity. She wanted to understand what it meant. GH, who had miraculously survived, also returned home and told Amanda about the horrific scenes he witnessed, from the citywide blackout to the internet disruption, the satellite phone failure, and the bodies on the beach, to the plane crash. All these events were obviously not normal. Amanda listened for a while but didn't understand what GH meant. Just then, a strange sound suddenly approached from far and near. As the piercing sound ended, Amanda began to believe GH's words a bit more. But if a disaster was truly imminent, what were they to do? Considering the limited food and daily supplies and the inoperability of even the satellite phone, they couldn't just sit and wait for doom. GH suggested waiting for Clay, who had gone to the town, to return. Clay, weary, finally returned home. Amanda, seeing something was off, quickly asked what happened. Clay, incoherent, pulled out a red paper, indicating that the plane was scattering these things everywhere. When GH took it, he found it was written in a language he couldn't understand. At that moment, Clay's son came over, and he seemed to understand some of the content. After a careful examination, Archie informed everyone that it mentioned words like apocalypse, suggesting an imminent disaster. Hearing this, the Clay couple didn't hesitate to pack their bags and prepare to take their children back to their own home. Before leaving, Amanda apologized to GH for her earlier bad tone. Soon after, Clay, with his family, embarked on the journey home, but they found the road blocked halfway there. Amanda decided to get out and check the situation, but she was shocked to find a string of Teslas collided with each other. Even more bizarrely, there was no one in the cars. Seeing the auto-drive feature marked on the vehicles, Amanda realized something was wrong. Meanwhile, another Tesla was speeding towards them. Seeing this, Amanda hurried back to the car and took the wheel to try to avoid it. Unexpectedly, just as she steered the car to the left front, the Tesla crashed into them fiercely. Then, another Tesla came speeding towards them, but Amanda managed to maneuver the car to avoid it just in time. Before they could react more Teslas crazily headed their way. After a narrow escape, the Clay family had no choice but to return to GH's house. This time, compared to the previous strange occurrences, they knew something terrible must have happened outside. But with no internet and even mobile phones not working, they found they could do nothing at the moment, and perhaps the only thing they could do was to temporarily stay in GH's house. Now, all they could hope for was a quick restoration of the network so they could understand what was happening. However, more terrible things were yet to come. The next day, when Archie got up, he suddenly found his teeth were loose. With a gentle tug, one tooth fell out, followed by several more. This bizarre phenomenon startled Amanda, who called her husband to see what was happening. But Clay, too, was nothing but shocked. As they pondered what might be the cause, Archie mentioned that he and his sister had gone to the forest yesterday and that he had been bitten by an insect. He wondered if the tooth loss could be related to the insect bite. While Archie was recounting his strange encounter, Julia suddenly realized Rose was missing. Worried, she hurriedly ran out to look for her. Just then, Archie's condition worsened. prompting Clay and GH to prepare to take him out for help. Before leaving, GH instructed Ruth to find Amanda and accompany her in searching for Rose. After saying goodbye to Rose, GH and Clay set out towards another villa on the small island, where a peculiar man named Danny resided. Since the road to the town was blocked, they hoped Danny hadn't encountered any trouble and might have medicine to save Clay's son. Upon reaching the villa and knocking persistently, the man named Danny finally opened the curtains. However, upon seeing them, Danny warned them to stay away from his doorstep. Although puzzled, GH and Clay stepped back a few steps, only to see Danny emerge with a shotgun. GH was surprised by this but explained their situation. Upon hearing about Archie's tooth loss, Danny immediately suggested it was related to the previous noise. Shocked by this revelation, they wondered if it was indeed related to war. Regardless, Archie needed help, and since Danny seemed to know something, he might have the necessary medicine. Despite GH's pleas, Danny refused to help. Not even for money. The situation became awkward. Meanwhile, in the forest, Ruth encountered a bizarre scene as a large herd of deer surrounded her. A robust stag stepped forward, inching closer to Ruth. But at the critical moment, Amanda rushed over and startled the deer with her screams. Perhaps realizing these two women were not to be trifled with, the deer dispersed. Back with GH, seeing Danny unyielding, he drew his weapon and confronted him. As tensions rose, Clay stood between them, urging calm and pleading with Danny to help his son. After a heartfelt speech from Danny, perhaps moved by Clay's words or not wanting to engage in a real confrontation, Danny finally agreed to sell the medicine at a high price. After administering the pill to Archie, they prepared to leave. At that moment, Danny provided a piece of insider information, suggesting that all this chaos was the work of other countries. He believed that they had made too many enemies worldwide, and it could be a coalition of some nations. If this was all true, then GH, Clay, and the others might need to find a shelter to avoid the impending disaster, or else they wouldn't survive. Danny then informed them that someone had built a bunker on this small island, and if they could find it, they might be able to escape the catastrophe. Clay, prepared to leave, didn't take it seriously as he was only concerned about his family's safety and finding Rose. However, GH suddenly told Clay that if the situation here was widespread, they really needed to find that bunker to avoid disaster. GH had had his suspicions, and now Danny's words and everything that had happened only further confirmed his guess. GH explained that to destroy a chaotic country, one just needs to slowly dismantle it from the inside. The first phase is isolation, cutting off the target's internet communications and transportation to make them as deaf and paralyzed as possible. Next, prepare for the second phase. Use covert attacks and misinformation to scare them and break down their defenses. Once people start to panic over supplies or other issues, the third phase would automatically ensue. As GH spoke, Amanda and Ruth, searching for Rose, were shocked to discover that the city across the river had already started to validate GH's prediction. As the third phase commenced, a quiet luxury villa had a bicycle parked at the front, and the glass on the door seemed to be smashed in a small area. The camera zoomed in to reveal Rose, who had somehow arrived there. She followed the lights to the basement, where she found a massive iron door. After struggling to open it, Rose stepped inside. When she turned on the power, the vast space and abundant supplies appeared before her eyes. In the corner, the emergency alert lit up on the signal receiving device as power was restored. The message warned of an unprecedented national calamity, with high radiation detected in densely populated areas and an urgent call for immediate shelter. However, Rose didn't see these warnings because she found a disc of Friends and could finally watch the long-awaited finale. With Rose pressing play, the film ends. As a disaster suspense movie, the suspense built up in the film is substantial. Although the ending isn't very polished, the structure is impeccable. After all, it's narrated from the perspective of ordinary people, who initially can't see the truth and can only gradually find the answers through experience. The chaos and disasters, though not directly encountered, still feel immersive, and realistically speaking, such disasters aren't impossible. For those interested, it's recommended to watch the original film. Thank you for watching. See you next time.